Hello and welcome to yet another presentation looking at the Go Grammar 2 workbook series. Today we're looking at Unit 2, which is all about nominalisation. Now let's go through this one. The information here on the first few slides is pretty important, so we'll need to spend a bit of time unpacking that. Now, as you know from your last activity, nouns are naming words, and the word nominalisation comes from the Latin word for name. It describes the process of changing other kinds of words, especially verbs, into nouns. And you can see it in the example here. Koalas in South Australia were almost exterminated in the early 20th century. This sentence can be rewritten as the virtual extermination of koalas in South Australia occurred during the early 20th century. The verb were exterminated has been replaced by the noun extermination. The focus has moved from the process, the doing, to the deed. And nominalisation is usually more compact. It is more likely to be found in formal writing, including academic writing, for example, your essays. Now let's have a look at some more examples here. We can see in this sentence, koalas in South Australia were also exterminated in the early 20th century. They were widely hunted for their fur. You can rewrite this with nominalisation and it will come out something like this. The virtual extermination of koalas in South Australia was the result of widespread hunting during the 20th century. Now you can see the difference in these two sentences in terms of how formal the second sentence is with the nominalisation compared to the first. Let's look again. South Australia has since been repopulated with Victorian koalas. There are now too many koalas in some areas. This sentence can be rewritten again with nominalisation like this. The repopulation of South Australia with Victorian koalas caused overstocks of koalas in some areas. So again, you can see how much more formal this second sentence is with the nominalisation compared to the first. In these pairs of sentences, the first sentence with the verbs are simpler and more direct. The sentences that use nominalisation are denser and more abstract. Good writers choose a type of writing that suits their audience and purpose. Now that's really important because just because something is denser and more abstract does not mean that it suits your audience and purpose better. So you choose the type of writing that's most appropriate. Now let's have a look at some of the activities to see what you need to do to complete them. In this first one here, it's pretty straightforward. The instructions tell us that in each of the following pairs of sentences, the second sentence uses nominalisation, just as it did in our explanation above. The verbs in the first sentence are in italics, so you can see them highlighted for us already. Underline the nouns in the second sentences that are examples of nominalisation. Now for the first one, we know that increased is, or have increased, is the verb, and increases will be our example, our answer for the first one. So that's the noun replacing that verb. Now we're looking for losing, and we know that loss is a noun replacing the verb are losing. So the sentence, considerable price increases are causing a loss of consumer confidence, will replace that first sentence. Pretty straightforward, as long as you can identify the verbs in the first sentence, you should be able to do a good job of identifying the nouns in the second. Let's move on. Activity number 2. This one's really simple. All you need to do is, let's read the instruction. In the following pairs of sentences, the same information is conveyed in 2 different ways. Within each pair of sentences, you will find one that is more formal and academic. It uses nominalizations in place of verbs. In the space provided after each sentence pair, write either formal or less formal. So looking at our first sentence here, significant improvements in internet speeds will be one of the benefits of the rollout of the national broadband network. Now we need to compare that to the second sentence, so we'll read that first before we answer. When we have the national broadband network rolled out, our internet will work much faster. Comparing these 2 sentences with each other, the second one sounds much more conversational, much more informal. So you would write on your sentence here that it is informal. It'll take me too long to do that, I think, and I'm not very good at writing with this pen. And this one here sounds much more formal, so you must write that this is the formal sentence. So this is the one that will use the nominalization. Now there's a couple of sentences there for you to go through and see if you can't find out which is the formal and informal example. Pretty straightforward. The next activity, in Undertake It Further, is probably a little bit more tricky for some. In many cases, nominalizations involve noun groups. Now, to understand what noun groups are, you are probably going to have a look at some of the activities from Go Grammar 1 that describe the noun groups. With determiners, adjectives, and adjectival phrases, underline the key or main word in each of these groups. So you don't have whole sentences here, they are just noun groups. And for our first one, the main word in this sentence is observation. So, close observation of animal behavior. So we know that observation is a noun. So that's why we're looking at that in this particular sentence. Alright, I hope that helps. Good luck with your activities. This is an ETV production brought to you by Prindiville Catholic College.